we're now going to have a look at the data section of your booklet. It's on page 17 and 18. And in actual fact, what you'll notice is as I'm doing this, I'm actually going to change the way I've done it from the way in the booklet, okay? So pay some close attention to the way that I set up the data. So what we've got is we need to do some actual generation, and we're going to use Google Sheets to do this. So we want to have a sample size of at least 50, and that means we need at least 50 rows to record our data. So when we set up our sample there, our table, we're going to have, now this is not going to be the different outcomes that we have anymore. This is going to be, for example, sample 1, how am I going to call this? I'm going to say this first simulation, second simulation, third simulation, etc. And it'll change depending on which scenario I've got, okay? I'm not going to worry about the total, the random number there. We're not going to include that at all, and we're just going to have our samples 1 through to 50, so we need 50 rows underneath that. Okay, so let me get this page back. Okay, so our scenario that we're going to do an example of is we want to look at the probability that a child being born with blue eyes, brown and green and grey eyes, as we've given that, and we're told a married couple is going to keep having children until they have all 4 different colour eyes in the family. So what we're going to need to do is we need across the top here, we need to simulate the first child and what colour eyes they'll have, the second child, what colour eyes they'll have, the third child, what colour eyes they'll have. And we'll probably do, just to be on the safe side, we'll probably let's set up to do about 20 different samples. Generates 20 different random numbers, and that's going to be our first sample. So we're going to generate about 20 different children, and later on I'll show you how we go back and count accurately to see how many children we needed to have, well, this couple had before they got all 4 different eye colours. And we're going to do that 50 times. Oh, come back there. We'll do that 50 times. So let's open up a Google Sheet, and you can see there I've got Google Sheets open. I've got my sample 1, 2, 3, and I've put the first outcome 1, 2, 3 there. And in fact we're going to be doing child 1, child 2, so I'm going to say child 1, child 2, child 3, and this is where life gets a little bit easier for us. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to select child 1, 2 and 3, and you can see how those 3 headings are exactly the same except for the 1, 2 and 3. Now Google Sheets is very good at recognizing patterns, so it would look at these 3 headings and go, oh, they've got child is the same in all of them, and the only difference is the number 1, 2 and 3. So I'm going to now, I went down to the bottom corner here, so you can see how if I move it around I get that's pointer. If I get close by I get that little hand. If I go to this bottom right corner I get that plus sign, that big plus. I'm going to click and hold, and now I'm going to drag this across a bunch of times, and I'm going to stop there, and you can see it's created those headings for me, child all the way through to child 16, and let's go over 14, 15, 16, I need to go over a little bit more, 17, 18, 19, 20. There we go. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to select all of these columns with there, and I'm going to go to the bit between, like between column A and B, the line between, and when I get right on that line I get this little arrow coming up. If I double click there, what that does is it changes the width of all of those cells to be the same width as my as the column heading. So that's one thing that I do as I go through and I do that. So that it now all fits across, and I'm going to do the same kind of pattern with the samples. So I've got sample 1, 2 and 3 down here, and remember we need to go down to 50. So I go to the bottom right corner where I get that big plus sign, I click and hold, and now I'm going to go down to row number 51, and that's now put up to number 50. So that's going to be my 50 trials, or my sample size of 50 that I'm going to do. Okay, so we can change that to trials if you prefer. So trial, number of trials or your sample. Okay, what I'm going to then do is across here I'm going to have a last column here, which is my total frequency. Okay, and I'll just make that into bold and a little bit bigger so it's the same size as everything else. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in my formula. So if we remember from previously, if I go back to where I randomly, here we go, here's my different outcomes. Okay, so I need to generate a random number between 1 and 10. So I'm going to use that formula, equals rand between 1, 10. I'm going to copy that and paste that into there, and that's generated a random number between 1 and 10. And now I don't want to have to type that formula in all of those times and fill up all of these different squares. I don't want to have to type it in every time. So I'm going to use that lovely, clever little plus button. So bottom right hand corner, click and hold, and I'm going to drag that across to child 20. And then I'm just going to go over a little bit more. And now I'm going to go down and click into the plus sign again. And I'm going to go down until I get to row 51. And that has now filled up that entire block of numbers with random numbers between 1 and 10. Okay, so if I look at any different cell, it's that same numbers there. Okay, now if I go and actually do anything else in another cell, and let me just show you this, if I go across to say this total frequency and I start typing something in there and I hit enter, did you notice what happened if I do it again? These random numbers keep changing every time I enter something in a cell. So I don't want them to change. Once I've generated that random number, I just want to use those random numbers. I don't want them to change on me anymore. Okay, so I'm now going to just select all of this. I'm going to say select all, so Control A selects the whole lot, and I'm going to say copy, and then I'm going to go back across, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to do a paste special. And this is where you can paste values only, okay? Or you could do the paste formula, but we don't want to do that in this one. We just want to paste the value. So it's going to take that formula equals rand between 1 to 10, and it's just going to replace all of those cells with the number that it's generated. So I'm going to paste for that only. And so now when I look at these cells, you can see here if I look at the formula, it's just got the number 6 in that cell. That formula equals rand between has disappeared. I use that to generate the numbers, but now I've just pasted over and I've just got the numbers, so they're not going to change on me. Okay, and in actual fact, I think I'm just going to change this font size down a little bit just so that I can get this to fit on my screen. There we are, that's going to be better. Okay, just because I've got this on my laptop screen, whereas on the screen that you've got it's much bigger. And I'm just going to also change this so that it's centered in the middle. I like it in the middle of the cell. I find that easier to read. Okay, so there's my numbers. Now what I've got to do is I've got to look and match these up. So I'm going to start with trial number 1. Okay, child number 1, there was a 6 there. So if I think about what that number 6 represents, the number 6 would represent a child with brown eyes. So what I'm actually going to do is I want to colour that cell in a brown. Then I'm going to go to child number 2. Child number 2 got the number 2. So what does that number 2 represent? That number 2 represents blue eyes. So I'm going to go back to there and colour that cell, I'm going to colour it in blue. So I've got a child, and my first trial I should say, I've got my first child had brown eyes, my second child had blue eyes. Now child number 3 is the random number 10, and the number 10 represents grey. So that means child number 3 has grey eyes, so I'm going to colour that in grey. Then child number 4 here is the number 5. So let's have a look, what does the number 5 represent? That represents having brown eyes. So I'm going to shade that in a brown colour again. Then I get to child number 5 and they've got the random number 9 there. So if I think, can I stop now that I've got 4 children in this trial? Have I got all 4 eye colours? I've got brown, I've got blue, I've got grey, I have not got green yet. And so this couple will keep having another child, and their child number 5 is going to be with the random number 9. So that is the eye colour of green. There we are. So just random chance. So that is going to be coloured in green. And I'm actually going to stop this. I'm going to delete all these numbers that come after that, because that couple have now got all 4 different eye colours. And I can say that that couple in trial number 1 had 5 children before they got all 4 different eye colours. And I'm going to repeat this process with every single trial now, from trial 1 through to trial 50. I'm going to repeat that same process. And once I've got that, I will have this total frequency column here, which is going to be what we need to analyse later. So there is how we create our data.